Hello, folks. I am your host, the Dynamite Trip, and today on uh, Comic Fever. I don't know why I just drew a blank on my own name of my show, but I did. Anyway, on Comic Fever, it is X-Men Blue number 10. This is the non-spoiler review. Yeah, first up, as we always do, writer is Colin Bunn, penciler is Giovanni Valletta. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Picture is Scott Hanna. Color artist is Guru EFX. And letterer is VC Joe Carter Bagna. First, let's address the elephant in the room. X-Men number 10. I didn't show that, so I'm showing it now. But first, let's address the elephant in the room. People are complaining about the numbering system that Marvel has, for lack of better words, gone back to. But personally, I think their old numbering system was great. I mean, because, yeah, the story arcs changed, but nothing really changed. I mean, nothing else has changed. I personally think it was, I was getting sick of the way they kept doing things where they would do like a one through something and then they'd be done with the story arc, so they went back and it was like one through whatever again, and then after that storyline they went back and went through this. Personally, it got a bit much. Uh, at least in this story, it's gone that road of just continuing, and I actually kind of like it. As for the art, I think Guru EFX did a good job with the colors, and I think Scott Hanna did great with the inking. Letterer Joe Carmagnan did a great job. Uh, it was refreshing. Um, okay. This might seem like a bit of a spoiler, but not really, because I'm literally not giving up the storyline itself. But I did like that they kind of took one of the team members and kind of put them up in the forefront uh, and made this particular book or these brand of books that are coming up sort of all about him. They made this story arc sort of all about him. I know that I said in my last review that his power sets seem sort of lame because of what they did to him, you know, making him use magic now. But and don't get me wrong, I still feel that way. I still feel like, you know, that's kind of an add on to an already great character. Um, and then, but instead of making him even better, it kind of ruined the character. Um, but I do think this book kind of gives you more of a sense of why he ends up going that route of using magic. Um, anyway, another thing I have to mention, I didn't like. Um, I like the fact that they used him and put him in the forefront. But what I didn't like is, um, I don't want to give away too much here. This is, after all, the non-spoiler part of the review, but I didn't like the way they made him into the beast part of the beast. I know that doesn't make sense, but hopefully, if you read this, hopefully you get what I mean. Alright, that is my non-spoiler review. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Please rate, subscribe, thumbs up, uh, comment. Always comment. I try to get back to you when I can. And as I say at the end of all these videos, or this part of the video, I'll see you on the other side. Alright, now, if you have stuck around, this is X-Men Blue number 10, the spoiler review. This story arc was called Toil and Trouble, and believe me, you'll find out why. And I think it is actually pretty good name for this particular brand of this particular story arc. But anyway, so we've got the usual. We've got the main characters: Margaret Girl, Jean Grey, Cyclops, Scott Summers, Angel, Warren Worthington III, Beast, Hank McCoy, Iceman, Bobby Drake, and finally Jeremy Hudson. The only one that doesn't have a code name as of yet. So the book opens up, and we're in Lowtown Madripoor. We see Beast with one of the ninjas they encountered in a previous comic. This ninja says, "Do you want to talk about it?" Hank replies, "The day we met, your powers, they made me feel things. They made me doubt myself." The friend, we learn her name is Nightshade, says, "I regret that." Hank says, "It's alright. It's nothing new. Since I've been here, in this time, I've known nothing but doubt. Forget mutant abilities. I always felt my mind was the thing that set me apart from others." Hank continues, "I was more than the bouncing brute. I could always outthink most anyone else. You show me a problem, I come up with a solution. You show me a bit of tech, I can easily adapt to it." Next page, Hank continues, "But since we came here to this time, I can't seem to catch up. I understand plenty more than the average person, I suppose, but it can't help feel like I hit a cognitive brick wall. So I look to other avenues to set me apart." Nightshade says, "I've only known you a short while, so forgive me if I speak out of turn. But it seems to me that when it comes to a crisis of faith, you are no smarter as you might think. You are not as smart as you think." Hank says, "That's not very nice to say, considering my..." Nightshade cuts him off and says, "When I looked into your eyes, into your heart and mind, I could feel what you were feeling, and it was not doubt, it was guilt, for the things you have done." A close-up of Nightshade, "And for the secrets you keep from your friends." Hank replies, "You're right, of course. I wish I could say otherwise. The X-Men wouldn't understand. They wouldn't approve. I don't like it myself, but I can't turn back now." Hank walks off, and as he does, he finishes the thought. "I'm too close to understanding something, to unlocking the secrets that can make me important again." Walking along, then a voice stops Hank in his tracks. The voice says, "I don't think I like your little girlfriend, Henry." Hank looking around. Are you following me? Now, the voice says, I don't think I like the way she's implying that I'm a bad influence on you. Hank says, she doesn't know anything about you. And for the record, you are a bad influence on me. But you are also, unfortunately, necessary. The voice, now a holding shadow on a brick wall, says, it's good to be needed, I suppose. And you, Henry. The next page, Beast enters the area the voice was coming from. A swirling smoke all around the voice is of the Goblin Queen. She finishes, you need me oh so much, whether you want to admit it or not. Getting closer behind Hank, the Goblin Queen continues, after all, I can help you become the man you want to be. Hank replies, well, why didn't you say so? I would love to be wealthy, not, not pummeled on a daily basis by robots. Oh, and of course, I would like to keep my chiseled movie star good looks. Smiling, whispering into Hank's ear, the Goblin Queen says, I'm glad you haven't let the drudgery of this world rob you of your sense of humor, Henry. It will help, I promise. It will help you cope with the lessons I have in store for you. The next page, in the danger room, Bobby Drake stands. A voice a voice says, shall we begin? Bobby says, begin. We have been training for hours. I thought we were just finishing. We see it as Bobby and the woman Danger, the one that was formed from the Blackbird. She says, you're done only when I say you are done, Bobby Drake. Magneto has put me in charge of training you, making you ready for any threat you may face. Judging by your recent performance, I believe we have much to go. Bobby Drake, fuming from the words of danger, Bobby replies, you know, I liked you a lot better when you were just our Blackbird. And frankly, I don't think you know anything about my capabilities. I've been like one of the team's MVPs, a close up on Iceman in his ice form. I don't know who you think you're dealing with, but I'm beyond slippery floors and snowballs. Danger, with her hands morphed into a chainsaw and force gun, says, prove it. The next page, still in the training danger room. Iceman, now in his monstrous ice form, says, Danger, you asked for it, lady. Danger, shooting and fighting back, says, yes, your power is expanding, your strength is growing, but you are distracted. This is what makes you weak, makes you a liability. Bobby Drakes, as the Iceman monster, tosses punch after punch. Ugh, he says after every swipe, and Danger dunking. Danger says you worry more about some boy who isn't returning your phone calls, and then human boy that you do than you do about your well-being or the well-being of your teammates. Bobby is still trying to strike Danger. You can't talk to me that way. You can't talk about Romeo that way. Maybe the other Iceman would let you get away with talking to him like that. Not me. A close-up of danger. That's better, but we are not done yet. The corner of the page. It is always so quiet. Is it always so quiet around here? The next page. Polaris and Magneto in the sitting room. Polaris says, I mean, I don't remember Xavier's mention being this peaceful. Magneto says, Xavier never valued soundproofing as much as I do. Xavier was always more trusting than I am. But believe me, we have our loud moments too. You'll see. Close up on Polaris. She says, I'll see if I should decide to stay. Back to Magneto. I thought you had already made up your mind, Lorna. Polaris says, honestly, Dad, I'm still not sure I can trust you. I don't know why the X-Men trust you. Close up on Magneto. You would have installed soundproofing in the mansion too. The next page, still in the sitting room with Magneto and Polaris. Magneto says, and that is why I need you. I don't want some mindless follower. I am not trying to rebuild the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. I want someone to help me guide these children. These children. Back to Polaris. She says, yeah, dealing with kids isn't your strong suit. Magneto retorts, I want someone to challenge my strategies. Showing both Magneto and Polaris, Polaris says, well, in that case, Dad, I'm your girl. The next page, Jean Grey and Scott Summers out in the mansion gardens. Scott says to Jean, so Jean, now you can hear my thoughts. Jean replies, technically, Scott, I could uh, always read your thoughts, if I wanted to. Walking down a walkway, Scott says, this is different. Jean says, yeah, something changed when I tried to free you from the white cream. We formed some sort of permanent psychic bond. Scott says, you're always in my head. Jean replies, that's what permanent means. Jean goes on, are you alright with that? Scott says, it's weird. I'm not going to lie. Jean, you're my best friend, but there are things that I would never tell you. Scott walks off, and Jean calls to him, Scott. Jean and Scott looking at each other. Jean continues, you can trust me with your secrets. I'd never betray your trust. Scott says, I didn't think you would. I watch out of Jean and Scott. Jean says, it works both ways, you know. I mean, whatever happened to us, I'm in your head too, says. Scott says, I know. Like I said, weird. Close up on Scott. I guess we mean, I guess you know, he says, I guess we both do. Jean and Scott getting closer. I guess I'm glad. She says, you are? Scott says, no, not about that. I'm just glad. The next page, and you're flying and holding Jimmy by his arms, and in the corner, Scott finishes his thought. He's not here right now. Getting back to Jimmy and Angel, destination Arrow Ridge, Colorado. Angel says to Jimmy, are you alright, Jimmy? I know this isn't the most comfortable way to travel. Jimmy Hudson says, I'm fine. I just appreciate you coming with me. A wide shot of Angel and Jimmy. Don't get sentimental. I just needed some time away from the others. I needed to clear my head. Jimmy replies, uh-huh. Landing down in the snowy lands of Colorado, Jimmy says, it's alright, you know. It's okay if you don't trust me, Warren. Angel says, trust's got nothing to do with it. I don't know you any better than you know yourself. And just like you, I'd like to know where you came from and how you got here. Angel, with a cocky smile, continues, plus, I've always had a soft spot for Wolverines. The next page, a woman says, nice of you two to show up. We find out it's the sheriff of Arrow Ridge, Kira Lee. She says, if I had known it would have taken you so long, I would have taken along another thermos of coffee. Angel says, we're just glad you agreed to meet us, Sheriff. It means a lot to a friend that you'd be willing to help us. And me. I'm just glad you're here. Kira, looking unimpressed, says, wow, you never stop, do you? The next page, in the room with Hank and the Goblin Queen. The Goblin Queen stands behind Hank. Hank is in a meditative state. Swirling pink energy float all around him. The Goblin Queen says, you're doing well, Henry. You're an excellent student. You are able to adapt to the lessons I teach you with ease. You stand on the vista of something amazing. A close-up of Hank. A look of immense struggle on his face. I don't think I can do this. It's like boiling hot water, slipping through my fingers. It's too much. The Goblin Queen, a close-up, she says, it's not meant to be easy. I never said it would be painless. This is a rite of passage. The Goblin Queen urging Hank on, that the Henry McCoy I know is not a quitter. Back to Hank. There is a doorway. More than one. Oh my. The next page, Hank morphing into his namesake, an actual beast. He says, "Stars and garters." Then to the sitting room of the mansion, and a portal of some sort opens up. Polaris says, "What is some sort of attack?" Magneto replies, "We're X-Men, Lorna. Of course we're under attack." To the Goblin Queen, talking to the things that have come through the doorways. Would you just look at you, all of you, so much more majestic than I had anticipated. Danger and Iceman, seeing the lightning flashes, run to the attack taking place. Danger says, "I hope you have been paying attention, Bobby Drake. I believe you are about to put your training to use." The Goblin Queen says to the demons that are stepping through the portal, "Step forward, my friends, out of your world of darkness and torment and into the light." The next page, in the corner, the Goblin Queen completes what she says to her demons, and into a world where we can do some real chaos. Now back to the gardens with Jean and Scott. Jean says, "You know what you're feeling? That jealousy? It's for nothing." Scott says, "Come on, Jean, I'm not proud of how I feel, but don't try to belittle it." Looking out on the small river that flows under the bridge they walk on, Scott says, "You like him." Jean replies, "Of course I like Jimmy, but this report is going to be something to get used to, and you're reading the signals all wrong." Scott says, "Really? Because the 'he's cute' is broadcasting loud and clear." Jean, somewhat frustrated, says, "So what? Jimmy's cute." Scott says, "Ugh." Jean says, "So is Warren." Scott says, "Ugh." Jean says, So is Bobby." Scott says, "Ugh." And Hank, Scott says, "Ugh." Then Jean says, "That doesn't mean I'm in love with any of them. It's never been the same as." The next page, Scott and Jean are about to kiss, when all of a sudden the mansion blows up. Looking in the direction of the mansion, Scott says, "You really have horrible timing." Jean says, "The worst." The next page, Jean and Scott running toward the mansion. Jean says psychically, "I can't see anyone inside. I don't know if it's some sort of interference or." Jean looking at the creatures that invade the mansion, she says, "God, demons." Jean and Scott begin to battle these creatures. Jean says, "Hank did this. He was the one who has been playing with magic, and he did this." Scott says, "You know that, right?" Jean replies, "You know what I'm thinking, Scott. You already know the answer to your question." Jean and Scott looks of both shock and disgust. The Goblin Queen says, "There you are, two of my favorite X-Men. Come on in." The next page, the Goblin Queen announces the gang's all here. From left to right, Pixie, Colossus, Bloodstorm, Nightcrawler. The Goblin Queen says, "I was feeling a little lonely, a little green-eyed, because Henry had all his little time-lost friends here to keep him company. So I had him invite a few of my own friends to the party." A close-up of Iceman, then of the ghouls. Then Danger is taken out. After the Goblin Queen, After the Goblin Queen says, "I call them the Hexmen. Get it?" The next page, Scott says, "Are they?" Jean says, "They're alive." Jean and Scott staring down these new Hexmen. Jean psychically says, "But these things, they took everyone out like they were nothing. What chance do we have?" Scott says, "We're about to find out." The Goblin Queen, Scott Summer, and Jean Grey. "You know, I was almost going to give you the chance to surrender. That's when I realized how much I loathed you." Beast in the background Grr. Beast steps up, and Gene says, Hank, are you in there? Is that still you? Scott says, Gene, get behind me. Roar, Beast screams. Scott readying his energy beam. Gene says, careful, Scott. I can't find any trace of Hank in his head. He's just the Beast. To be continued. And as I say at the end of all my videos, I'll see you on the other side. Hope you enjoyed. Please comment, subscribe. I'll see you on the other side. Bye.